Well, it's about high time that I accepted it. Versus the community will probably not be coming back to Forza Horizon 5, which is a great shame because Horizon 5, it's just so much better for versus the community, I think, than Forza Motorsport 8. Certainly, I've not really got to grips with Motorsport 8. I'm having some difficulties playing it. It's alright, but I just don't think I'm going to join versus the community on it. I just think I would be too bad to, without using things like flashbacks or stuff. I'm not the greatest driver in the first place, but Motorsport 8 I just feel even worse than before, so I don't know. Regardless, it's unlikely that we'll see Failrace go back to Horizon 5 for anything, which is a shame, because Horizon 5 is still going. It's still got, I think, at least a year left in it. But that's up to Alex to decide, and so I figured I would show off the 20 cars that I used in Versus the Community event's official Group 1 Versus the Community, I might add, rather than the community run Group 2. And just give you guys an idea of what it was like to drive some of those cars. So first up, it's the Mercedes-Benz X-Class. Now, as I recall, this one was actually the last event we did that night. The A-Class German cars, I think it was the first one. Ultimately, I don't remember because it was 2.5 years ago now. Christ, that makes me feel old. 2.5 years since I drove this 618 horsepower monster to victory 2 or 3 times that night. Or was it just 2? I don't remember. There was basically 2 ways that you could go with building a car that night. It was C-Class off-road racing, and I went for the second of the 2 options. The first option was to put on off-road race tyres and hope that your grip would win you the day. And to be fair, BioRen actually almost won a race had it not been for a missed checkpoint or 2. And I went for the second option, which was to stick on the stock tyres but go for mountains of power, which is also what Alex went on to do with his Jeep Wrangler. And my reason for choosing the X-Class was I knew it was essentially a meta cross-country car in A-Class cross-country. So I thought, if it does alright there, it's probably going to be alright in C-Class. And I wasn't half wrong. So, this car, it could have been better, but it could have been a lot worse. Didn't get many outings afterwards, though. Next up on the list, it's the first car that featured in an unaired adventure, and unfortunately Alex didn't do a sort of best of unaired adventures video for Horizon 5, which is irritating. It's my Weebmobile M5, 2018 M5. As I recall, this one was essentially bone stock with some rally tyres and some extra horsepower. It wasn't great. It was okay, but it wasn't super fast. And yeah, it paid for it quite badly. This was early days. I didn't exactly know how to build cars, so I think it still had the thick front tyres, which is not really how you build cars in Horizon 5 anymore, unless you're just trying to max PI and go for a top S2998 if you can. So yeah, not a particularly well built car. Only good thing about it was Prince Eugen on the side. Now this one's a bit of a special case. Unlike Horizon 4, where I used one vehicle quite a lot, Horizon 5, I tended to use one car for every single adventure, and with very little reuse between them. And this Vauxhall Lotus Carlton was the only car that I can remember, and that I can see from my uploaded videos, that I ended up using between two different adventures. The first time I used it, it was an adventure calling for V10 powered cars, so I swapped a V10 into it, and then the next adventure called for 90s cars, and since this was already built, I reckoned, let's just use it. With some differences, I tried to give it a bit more downforce to try and help it get around the corners better. Didn't really do much, as I recall. It was an okay car, and that was about it. Now here was a fun and equally terrifying thing that we had. The Renault 8 Gordini, one of my favourite little cars in the world. I have a model of one somewhere that I turned into a taxi once for a video that I never ever got round to uploading way back in 2007. Who cares? Renault 8 Gordini, love the little thing. For this one, I was an emergency pick. I was originally going to go for a DeBerti design F-150, and then was told last minute, actually, you're not meant to be bringing along any off-road cars, and I was like, had to panic and find something, and then realised I already had this. The tune was not mine. And I think you'll find that for a lot of the cars on this video. The tune is not mine, except where I state it. So the tune from Grandma Driving, also known as I Suck at Driving, kind of fitting, because this thing, it was very difficult to get right. It was so light. It was powerful, it was fast, but it was light and it hated the corners, and it cost me in a couple of races with missed checkpoints. Did still manage to win a couple of races though. Could have won another one had Alex not accidentally punted me out of a checkpoint, but that sort of thing, that happens sometimes. The Audi TT RS from 2018. A car that I built so poorly that I didn't even bother to save the setup. In fact, I put someone else's setup on the driving segment of this video just to give it an idea of what it was like. In fact, if anything, the tune I put on it for this video was better than the one I built for it, and I'm pissed that I didn't create something better, but it happens. And of course this one was aired in a video, forget what it was, German cars. It was not fun at all. I've just had a look back at the description of the video I uploaded. It was A-class cars using semi-slick tyres. Yeah, this car, awful. And I did not like it, hence why I discarded the tune and haven't looked back since. Now this is a car that did unexpectedly well. The Mercury Cyclone spoiler from an adventure where we had to build a car that was at least 1,800 kilos, or however many pounds that is. Whatever the weight, this one was just over the weight limit. Only 1,831 kilograms. It was as light as I could get it, and with as much power as I could get into it. Big, fat, American muscle car with great big fat off-road tyres, and it was half decent. It didn't do well on every track, and of course it was completely overshadowed by Starman's Toyota 4Runner. But this thing, it did surprisingly well, and I drove it again recently and actually managed to beat my lap time from the event that sadly was only partially aired. The entire adventure did not get aired. Only 2 races for it actually made their way into the now unlisted Survive the Hunt number 46, which itself was replaced by Survive the Hunt number 46. You can still watch that in my playlist, the Failrace VSTC playlist. that I have on my channel. You can go and watch those 2 races from Alex's perspective, if you so wish. And of course you get a little bit of Survive the Hunt into the bargain. The first and so far only spec adventure that I've taken part in, at least on Horizon 5. I can't remember if I took part in one on Horizon 4. But, yeah, the Chevrolet Camaro Z28 from 1979. Everyone had to drive this, and it was up to you if you built it for power, for grip, for dirt, for tarmac. I went for off-road abilities, trying to make an all-rounder, and it was alright, I guess. But it could have been a lot better. I think I may have won a race in it. I'd have to rewatch the adventures again, but I'm pretty sure I did not win. It was just not good enough. Not good enough at all. It was down on power. Had grip, but it was rear-wheel drive only, so yeah, not my favourite car, if I'm honest. This was an unlucky car for me. It had so much potential, and yet I just kept losing races. Front-wheel drive, B-Class, Civic Type R, the closest thing to overpowered you could get, but not even the power of Iron Army herself could save this one. As even when I decided to be all cheaty, I was swapping. Was it for this one or was it for Group 2? I can't remember, but if at some point I was swapping between a more tarmac-oriented setup with rally tyres and a more off-road setup with off-road race tyres, and neither really worked that well. And then, of course, I think we had some of those classic Horizon 5 connection issues where, for whatever reason, I just was unable to join one of the races. So yeah, unlucky car for me. This is a car that I really love. It looks amazing, it sounds amazing, and it drives pretty well. If a little bit oversteery, you need to be a bit... well, you need to try and be not so trigger-happy, lead foot. But it's a fun car to drive, and it can do very well. And this car could have won a race had I not choked. Yeah, that hurts. Still hurts to this day. Good car, fun car, fast car, but very difficult and tricky to drive sometimes. And unfortunately, on this particular occasion, it was incredibly tricky. Didn't want to behave, and it cost me a couple of races. Yeah. Sometimes it's your favourite cars that let you down the hardest. Now, admittedly, I almost forgot about these two. Because, the adventure that this took part in never ever got aired. And, well, I was the only person who really made anything about it. Yes, the Hot Wheels adventure. Back when the Hot Wheels expansion DLC was new. And we attempted to give it a go, and we discovered that the only way to be competitive around Hot Wheels is to build power cars with a little bit of grep. Yeah, and turns out that doesn't make for very fun racing, because all it takes is for one driver to be slightly better than the other, and you get massive gaps between the different drivers, and it just wasn't fun. So, yeah, no Hot Wheels adventures ever took place after this. This was the first vehicle I used, a Dodge Coronet Super B. I'd already used it in Group 2 to some decent effect. Very nice tribute car as well to Driven to Destruction, or Test Drive Evil Destruction, a video game I really loved back in the mid-noughties. And I was doing a career playthrough on my old PC, but then I got bored and stopped, and not really got round to completing that yet. But the Coronet, based off the Paint 1 for the Gladiator in that game. Taking the lessons from the B-Class races, we produced a whole bunch of these power cars for A-Class. My choice was this, the Holden Monaro GTS 350Q? I don't remember. It's the only Holden Monaro in the game. that's at least badged as a Holden. Yeah, GTS, it says on the back, on the front there. Yeah, this is actually not quite the build I made for it. It's actually slightly better than the original build, because the original build was A797. This one is actually A800, using, as best as I can remember, the pieces that were in use, because I didn't save the tune, the setup from that, because it was awful. It was just undrivable mess. Once again, another test drive / driven to destruction tribute, this time to the paint one for the Hurricane car in that game. I love Corvettes, and for some reason I find myself avoiding them. I guess because they're usually kind of hard to build, and someone else always has the idea to drive a Corvette as well. Or first, rather, if there is an event that would allow it. So I tend to go for a choice that probably wouldn't be so mainstream. But in this case, I wanted to drive a Corvette. A C3 Corvette, not my favourite model, but still Corvette. Had to start in B class, and well, they start fairly low in B class, as I remember, as I recall. Chuck on some big fat off-road race tyres, chuck on some all-wheel drive conversions, and what you get is a car that can be extremely rapid, but most of the time it wasn't. In fact, it was usually kind of slow. Didn't help that I missed a race. Also didn't help that I missed a checkpoint on one of the races where I was the fastest car by far, and I finished way down the order because I missed a checkpoint, and I can't remember if I was punted out of it or if it was my own doing. Either way, something I'm super bummed about, and it helped attribute to a bit of a burnout that I was having with Horizon 5 at this time, especially versus the community, and I didn't join up to another versus the community for another few months. And unfortunately, I wouldn't be in so many more for much of the next year. It wouldn't be until November that I started signing up again, and that I got back into a Group 1 adventure, that I had to build a front-engined rear-wheel drive car for a selection of road races. And I went for this. I knew that Mazda MX-5s could be fun little cars. This was the first time I'd ever tried to build a Mazda MX-5. Put on full slick tyres, made it super light, and what I had was a car that could be very grippy, but inexplicably didn't have any. Sometimes it would just lose the rear end. And I think I also had some bad luck by crashing into some things. Yeah, this car. Ultimately, didn't like it much. That's what happens when I build cars. I can't build cars to save my life. And this one, just another one of those cases. The 2008 Subaru Impreza, one of the most successful cars I had, if I remember correctly. Very fast, very grippy, had some very good races in it. And the adventure remains almost entirely unaired, except for about a 20 or 30 second clip that Alex uploaded as a short. I mean, you can still see it from my perspective, but from Alex's perspective, with his commentary, no. All you get is that short. And that's really irritating, because those are some good races, as I knock my hand against my microphone. I don't typically like the 2008 Subaru Impreza. I think it's a departure from what a Subaru Impreza is meant to be. But that's not really by the by. In the end, it is a rally car, and we were doing B-class races in off-road and cross-country. I think that was all the restrictions were, because I didn't put them into the description of my video, so I don't know. But yeah, it did the job, was decent, got me at least one race win. Good enough for me. I love Jaguar E-Types, and for the first adventure of 2023, I chose an E-Type, based off the one that I saw racing at the Goodwood Revival, I think it was, in September of 2022. I think it's Adrian Newey's car, PS1175, more or less exactly as it appeared during the race at the Revival that it broke down whilst in the lead of. Fun. And maybe some of that luck rubbed off onto me, because this car, well, the restrictions were A-class cars from the 1960s. They were allowed engine swaps, but no driveline swaps. So essentially, they had to be rear-wheel drive. And yeah, I based this off of a all-wheel drive build that I did download. I had to do some changes myself. It was alright, but it was quite twitchy. Got a lot of wheel spin. And it didn't help that, despite the fact that it was front-engined, all the weight seemed to be at the back of the car. So, yeah, that was fun. Didn't do too badly, just wasn't a race winner. And was barely even on the podium as well. So, yeah. Could have been better, could have been far, far worse. Now, there's really not much to say about this one. This was approaching the end of Horizon 5's lifespan in the versus the community sense, and by this point I was not really giving much of a fuck when building cars. So this time, I just took one of Grandma Driving's tunes again. It's supercharged, straight 4, and that was essentially what it was built for anyway. B-class cars with these 4-cylinder engines. It's a decent car, but I think it works better for sprint races, and that really showed, because on the first race, well, this mid-engined little sports car that I have a personal connection with, because my mum owns a 1985 MR2, didn't do too well. And I decided to abandon it after just a single race. Not sure if that was the right decision, though. My replacement car for that adventure was this, the 1991 BMW M3 E30. Also using another person's tune, this time the unjustly banned Seppi SP4. This was before his tunes all got removed because Forza. But yeah, this car, half decent, but still not really on the pace. Which is why I wonder if switching to this was the right decision. It didn't have a lot of grip, it had a fair amount of speed, but it, in the straight line at least, but going around a circuit wasn't great. I think I had a decent battle with Alex in one race, but in the end, drove this thing for 3 races, and for the final race we all just memed and just drove Alex's car, except Finland Ball, he messed up. Yeah, not really a adventure I look back on fondly, if I'm honest. Name 2 things that don't go together. Never mind, I'll do it for you. SUVs and all-road racing. Yeah. Had to drive a big old SUV and try and get it around a tarmac track as fast as you can. Never mind that SUVs are much better for off-roading, in game at least. In real life they're probably shit. But yeah, for this one I tried to be a bit stingy. I didn't build the car very well, if I'm honest. Put a V10 engine into my DBX, put rally tyres on it so I would have fair amounts of grip but also have more speeds than someone who put semi-slicks or full slicks, but then didn't put any aero on it, which probably would have helped a great deal. Therefore this car could be rapid in a straight line, but going around corners it was absolutely fucking hopeless. Hated every second of it. Might not have done if I'd put some wings on. The Rebel was a decent machine back on Horizon 4. I'd seen it being pretty good in some of the versus the community adventures from that game, and when it came back to Horizon 5, I was itching to give it a go. Ultimately, it wasn't a spectacular car, but it was good enough for the C-Class V8 engine adventure that we ultimately went on. I feel I did a decent job. It understeered like hell, like a pig, but I had enough power and enough grip to get it going around a track pretty decently fast, and didn't have a huge amount of wheel spin in either. So, all in all, this car, the only thing it needed more of was grip, and we could have had a pretty fast car. It was still decently fast, but it could have been a lot faster. The previous adventure with the Rebel was back in March of 2023. It took another 6 months for me to be in another adventure, and part of that is due to failing to get in, and part of that is burnout yet again. I was getting bored of versus the community, and eventually did get back in September of 2023 for what would sadly be the final time. Forza Motorsport 8 was just around the corner, and my new PC was ordered was on the way, but I would never get the chance to show it off on stream. Or on stream, I say, on a proper versus the community video. And never got the chance. Instead, this was the penultimate car that we took part in. The 1977 Ford Escort RS 1800, and it was awful. It was just not good at all. It had all-wheel drive, but it was very light. It was unstable, and whilst it could hold on to decent positions early on, it would fade towards the end of the race. And at least on 2 occasions during that adventure, I went from a good position to out of the podium's places within the space of a few corners of the final lap. Yeah, this car, it really knew how to let me down. Yeah. And here we are. The final car of my versus the community days on Horizon 5. The Impreza S209. Damn. Well, this car had been wearing the same livery for almost 2 years at this point. The anti-bone shaker livery, because this car I almost exclusively used in online racing. Once again, this was a I suck at driving, grandma driving tune with the body kit, and unfortunately it wasn't as good as it could have been. Far better suited for sprint races, point to point, rather than the the circuit races we ended up doing. Even rally tyres have better grip than street tyres, and whilst I did have some decent straight line speed, didn't have the grip round the corners, and yeah, I could have won a race at one point, or at least been half decent, but in the end, I went over the same curb on a Stadio that I had already gone over like 4 times before, and suddenly the 5th time was the one time that I wasn't allowed to do it properly. Especially when a podium place was on the line. Yeah. Yes, my darking didn't help. I prayed to a Laplace many times. It did not work. More proof that gods do not exist. With Motorsport 8 just around the corner, Horizon 5's versus the community sign-ups had been declining quite a bit. At the beginning of the game's lifespan, or rather the versus the community lifespan, the sign-up lobbies, forms were packed. There was so much, and yet towards the end, it was getting pretty hard to find people to join up. So I don't know how it would go if we held another versus the community on Horizon 5 again. Maybe we'd get renewed interest, maybe not. But Motorsport 8 isn't it, kid. It really isn't it.